It's safe to say that guitars generally are made of wood, but what if I told you it was possible to make them out of plastic, and more specifically that it's possible for you to 3D print your own? Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be checking out this new guitar of mine, which is made from almost no wood at all. So first I'll talk you through the build a bit and explain a bit about the model. Then I'll take you through some tones and show you how it sounds. And then finally we'll go through whether this is something that you should do and my advice if you are going to undertake this yourself. So starting off with what really is this? Well, if you're into your 3D printers, you might know a brand called Prusa, who make printers. And a while ago they released what they called the Prusa Caster, which was a 3D printable guitar that you print in sections and then throw together. Now these models that you can download, which I'll link down in the description, are designed to work with a Harley Benton kit that you buy from Thomann. But as you'll know if you watch the channel, a little while ago I built the Hello Kitty Telecaster, which meant that I already had a Telecaster style bridge and pickups to hand, which is exactly what this kit is designed to work with. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to use those up, and with my 3D printer, which I haven't long had, I'm going to print this guitar. So the parts themselves were printed with a 25% infill, and for those of you that are maybe a bit less familiar with 3D printing, this is what the inside of the prints looks like. So this is about half of the central section that the pickups and scratch plate mount to, that I have just because I ran into a slight issue when printing and had to stop. But I held on to it because I thought, just to give you some idea of what it looks like inside, especially for those of you that aren't familiar with 3D printing, it's quite a cool thing to have. But it also probably gives you some idea of why so much black material is used up, because actually this is actually a fairly sturdy piece, but then you need that to withstand the string tension. So the build itself was fairly straightforward. In the end I ended up using about 4 rolls of filament for doing the various parts. Now, not all of that material is actually in the guitar, but of course if you get near the end of your roll of filament and don't have enough to finish the next part, then you can't use that. I'm sure someone smarter than me can figure out how best to utilise the filament reels, but for me it was about 2 reels of black and 1.5 of green. Now I'll go over price a bit more later, but once all the parts were printed, we have everything we need to start assembling. So the body itself prints in 7 pieces, or 7 main pieces, 8 if you include the output jack, and these are designed to just be glued together. Now these outer sections have also got holes for screw threads, but actually getting in to access those M6 screws even with an Allen key is quite hard, especially when you've got the time constraint of the glue going off. So I didn't end up doing that, but so far haven't had any issues with it coming detached. So gluing the parts together was fairly straightforward, but making sure your print settings are perfect is key here. Now I don't think I had mine quite right, and as a result some of the parts warped ever so slightly. I think I could have done with having a slightly lower bed temperature. Now it didn't end up causing me any issues, but I can see that if you're way off then things won't line up nicely and it will cause you more issues. But once the body was together and all my ordered parts had shown up, it's actually a fairly familiar assembly. It's just like putting together any other guitar, except you've had to print and build the body first. So I put the hardware and control plates in, soldered everything up, and then drilled my holes in the neck for the neck bolts and for the tuners, and then we were good to just put the final bits together. Now because I didn't have some of the parts, I ended up going down the route of not using the kit and just bought in all my own parts from Northwest Guitar. So the parts I bought in being a pre-wired control plate, as well as the neck, tuners, string tree, and the neck bolt plates, as well as some little ferrules for the string holes. Once we were all built and put together, I've strung it with 9.5 gauge strings. Now I did this because obviously this is kind of a telly style guitar, and I believe it does have a telly scale length, and I don't like 9 gauge strings on a telly, I like 10s. However, just because this being made of PLA and being maybe a touch delicate, although that's probably just in my head, I didn't want to put too much tension in. And if you watch Prusa's video of the design of this, the reason they've gone for the telly style is because of that tension and the ashtray style bridge distributing that load better. So I didn't want to go too mad with heavy gauge strings and risk doing any damage. So I went with the 9.5s as a nice happy middle ground, and I'm pleased to say that it's kind of gone to plan. They feel closer to 10s and aren't as light as the 9s. and so far haven't had any issues with any bowing or anything like that. So that's a look at the build. Now let's hear how it sounds. So today I'm playing into my Marshall SV20H. Now the one other thing to mention, because I'm sure someone will mention it in the comments, is this pickup might look a bit wrong to you, and that's because if you've seen the Hello Kitty Telecaster video and the reason for me building that, this is a left-handed telly pickup. So normally your telly pickup is closer on the treble side and further away on the bass side, but in this case it's reversed because the bridge is a lefty bridge. But I actually quite like it. I find that it's given me just a slightly tighter bass end and a slightly less sort of bright and twangy top end, which hopefully you'll be able to hear. But we'll start on the neck pickup, and going into the Marshall, just on a cleanish tone, it sounds something like this. Then in the middle position it sounds like this. And then in the bridge position it sounds like this. So I don't know about you, but I think that sounds like a guitar. Exactly what you'd expect from a T-style guitar, really, except it just looks a bit different and funky. But then that's kind of what you'd hope for, isn't it? So I won't do too much more playing because you all know what a Telecaster sounds like, and this is very much reminiscent of that. What we will do instead is move on to talking about whether this is something that you yourself should pursue. Because as I said, the files are downloadable online, they're completely free, and yeah, they'll be linked down, so if you do want to try this, then you can. And I think you should if you have a 3D printer and you're into guitar. It's a great fun little project. Now, a few words of advice. If you are going to do this, use the kit, because as I've found, it's just way more expensive and a bit more of a pain to do if you try and buy up your own parts. Yes, ultimately you might end up with sort of a nicer neck and some locking tuners and things like that, like I have, but to be honest, by the time you've factored in material and stuff, I'm well over £200 into this project now, whereas the kit I believe is about 100 quid, and then your rolls of material, whatever they cost you, but it's doable for, you know, £150 there or thereabouts. My other bit of advice would be, especially with the centre section, because of the size of it and it needing to be one piece, it doesn't really fit nicely in most print beds, which means that you have to sort of print it sort of on an angle and upright rather than flat like you can print the rest of the parts. And this means you're going to need some supports. Now be very sparing with your supports and get your Z offset right, because if you do it like I did and get a little bit heavy-handed with the supports, they're a real pain to get off. But I'm sure if you're familiar with 3D printing, this is an issue that you will have encountered at some point. But just bear that in mind, especially with the centre section. But aside from that, I would massively encourage people to try this out because it is really cool. And obviously, with the fact that you're manufacturing your own parts, you can choose all of your colours. I mean, I went for this sort of green into brown, sort of two-way PLA, and then with the black accent and then the black hardware and bits, because that's what I wanted and that's what I thought was cool. But obviously, you can print all of these pieces in any colour you want, provided you can find the right material. So it's really awesomely customisable. And you know, it plays alright. I mean, compared to a professionally made instrument, it's never going to be incredible, and it's cheap is the other thing. But that being said, it is certainly playable. I've played worse guitars that have come out of an actual factory, and it looks really cool. So, you know, this is probably one that you hang on your wall and gets played very occasionally, but certainly give this a go yourself. But I think that just about does us for today. So leave me your thoughts down in the comments below, and if you do decide to do this, let me know how it goes. Send me over some photos on Instagram. that's always linked down in the description too. And if you would like to see more content and builds like this, then while you're down in the description, make sure you check out my affiliate links too, because shopping through those really helps this channel out and gives me a little bit more budget to do more daft builds like this. Let me know what you'd like to see next, and as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.